I just played every single Fantastic Four game ever released, and we're gonna figure out if these games are fantastic and I'll be enjoying myself, or ending up in the psych ward. Since we have a bunch of games to cover, I won't go in depth with each one, but I will give a quick review with my final thoughts with each game. Let's start with the very first Fantastic Four game on the PS1, simply called Fantastic Four. Let's just head online and buy it. Why is this so damn expensive? I better be getting some cosmic powers of my own with a price like this. Well, this game really does make an interesting first impression with the intro. The music that came blasting through my speakers was the last thing I expected the soundtrack to sound like. And these visuals? Look at the thing's face. There's not a single thought going on in there.
It's clobbering time!
Yeah, I don't think he knows what time it is. Why is Johnny Storm running like he has a huge turd clenched between his ass cheeks? I shouldn't be too hard on the visuals considering the game released back in 1997. Here's a pic I found of myself from around that time. Not gonna lie, the intro put me off a bit, but I don't want to be a negative Nancy and jump to conclusions. Let's see what IGN had to say in their review of Fantastic Four from back in the day. Every once in a while, a game comes along that redefines exactly what bad is. It establishes a new low point for the industry as a whole, a marker that other companies can look at and say, well, now we know what not to do. Fantastic Four is such a game. Based on the Marvel Comics publication of the same name, Fantastic Four is unique in the sense that it could very well be the worst game ever made. Well, let's just see what they gave a 1? They gave this game a 1? It can't be that bad. Yes, it is. Alright, so Fantastic Four is a beat 'em up, kinda similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, and Battletoads. Only it lacks any charm that those games had, and despite Fantastic Four coming out 2 years after these, it plays like it came out in the fucking Stone Ages. It's as if Dr. Doom himself created this game to show just how much he despises the Fantastic Four. I mean, look at this main menu. Oh, they must have been proud of this. Crash Bandicoot came out a year before this, and they actually attempted at making a title screen with Crash being animated and moving around. In this game, it's just the Thing with a stoic face staring at me as if he just witnessed an unspeakable horror. He must have just come back from playing this game. Okay, enough stalling. You get to choose which Fantastic Four character you want to play as, along with She-Hulk, and no, you can't twerk with her. The game starts off with a semi hurtling straight towards some explosive barrels, and you're off to fight the exact same enemies for the next hour or so. I already got bored after the first level, I'm not gonna lie. The gameplay is so repetitive. It's got this 2.5D going on with the 2D sprites and the 3D background, but don't be fooled because you can only go left and right. The punching just looks so awkward, and you move so slow. But the enemies, oh, you blink once and they landed a Mortal Kombat fatality on your ass. You do get access to different special moves depending on who you play as. The problem is, these combos are kinda complex, and since you move so slow, but everyone else is fast, they hardly give you a chance to pull any of them off, so you just mostly rely on punching. So if you get knocked down here, the enemies can just continuously wail on you, and you will not be able to get up. Look at this. Explain what I'm supposed to do here. I can't do anything. If you don't die during a level, you gain access to a secret boss. That's just the worst. It could be a different boss each time, but there's really only a handful, so eventually it just starts looping, and they just spam the same move on you, giving you no chance to land a hit. Like I said, the game lacks charm, so it just looks so bland. They could have just made it a 2D game with colorful sprites. An arcade Fantastic Four beat 'em up could have worked under the right hands. This game is just dark and depressing, which is how I felt after playing this. Turtles in Time came out 6 years before this and is way more fun with tons of personality. I feel bad if this was some kid's first impression of the Fantastic Four. The poor kid became a Dr. Doom supporter that day. Next, we got Fantastic Four on the PlayStation 2, based on the 2005 movie. Say what you want about the movie, but they nailed the casting. It was funny with moments making me burst out laughing.
Hey! You think you got problems? You take a good look, pal.
And the relationship between Johnny and Ben really put a smile on my face.
John!
And then there were moments where my smile disappeared and I was on the verge of tears. And then Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, I mean, fantastic cinema. It doesn't get much better. I mean, come on. So me being a kid loving the movie, I just had to get the video game. And I remember I adored this game. But kids love anything. I remember enjoying Bubsy 3D, but we all know how that game actually is. So, is this game as good as I remember? Well, first things first, if you jump into this game without seeing the movie, you won't really get any spoilers because this very loosely follows the movie. I mean, in the movie, when Johnny Storm announces on TV what everyone's superhero names are, and he calls Ben the Thing, Ben gets so pissed he manually hydraulic pressed Johnny's car and proceeds to hit him. In this game though, Ben calls himself the Thing loud and proud like it's a badge of honor. Also, there's a lot of villains from the comics that were never in the movie. Mole Man, Dragon Man, Diablo, Blastar, Puppet Master. I mean, you end up finding dinosaurs here. That's definitely wasn't in the movie. There are some moments in the game that do follow the movie though, like the scene on the bridge where everyone uses their new powers together as a team for the first time to save the firefighters. Except it's missing when Sue goes invisible, so I don't know if it's as good. Then of course in the beginning when they first get their powers, and the final fight with Dr. Doom. This game is also a beat 'em up, but compared to the last game, this is like eating a nice juicy steak after having to eat just the scraps. It was such a relief. You're in the hospital after the accident that happened in space, and immediately after waking up, Reed is just ready to throw hands. Look at him. He's not even phased all that much about his new powers, and he basically already knows how to use them since he starts beating up a bunch of Victor Von Doom's robots, which I'm guessing takes inspiration from the Doom bots that are in the comics. You can hack computers by doing these easy mini games as Reed. I know this is a video game, so I have to suspend my belief, but it's just crazy to me that all of a sudden Jessica Alba just knows how to do martial arts and can just flip around. Each character has their own special moveset, and honestly, each character is fun to play. It never got old smashing the ground as Ben or spinning my arms in a circle as Reed. This game also has combos like the first game, but since the controls are snappy, they're actually possible to pull off and pretty satisfying. Lighting enemies on fire as Johnny was a blast, and jumping around as Sue while she held some knives was cool. Not to mention all the AoE attacks Ben can do by just slamming the ground. All good stuff and easy to remember. They really made each character feel unique, and I found myself switching between characters often. Sue can go invisible to sneak up on enemies. Johnny is immune to fire, which can come in handy sometimes. Ben is the most fun for me because you can pick enemies up and slam them while also being able to pick up objects and yeet them at people. You'll go through a variety of different levels with a variety of different enemies, unlike the last game where I was losing my actual mind fighting the exact same carbon copies. You got dinosaurs, mummies, enemies throwing poison, shielded enemies. It never got stale. You even get to play as the Thing in Yancey Street beating up a bunch of thugs. This was a really fun level, mainly because you can throw cars at people and knock them off from building, and you get to wear the iconic trench coat. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. So yeah, this is an overall fun movie-based video game that could have been a decent standalone Fantastic Four game and not just based on the movie. There's a lot of bonus content here too, like seeing covers of comics and even secret levels like Latveria, where you go to Doom's birthplace to put a stop to him, but it's based on the comic versions of the characters, not the movie, so they look and sound different. And there's even some secret levels that take place in hell. I was half expecting just to be this game. My favorite though are the behind the scenes interviews of the making of this game. They got the main cast from the movie to do the voices in the game, which is just so cool. And it was interesting hearing them talk about the process of voice acting. Even the man himself, Stan Lee, is here explaining how he came up with the Fantastic Four and him even playing the game.
Yeah, I'm hitting him hard. Who am I hitting hard?
You're hitting that tree.
Well, boy, that tree isn't gonna mess with us anymore.
I wish developers still did stuff like this. It's just wholesome and puts a face to the people that made the game. I remember in Sly Cooper 1, you can hear how developers came up with the levels as you play in them.
And this is one of the first levels of the game we made, and it has been gone over and over and over.
There's even bios for the different enemies you'll be encountering in the game. The game does have issues though. The hitboxes are clunky and sometimes you'll get damaged just by being near an enemy. I would hit a boss for example, and it's as if I threw a wet napkin at him and nothing happened. And the boss fights are kinda lame. You just kinda hit them while they teleport everywhere, like the Diablo fight for example. And then there's one boss which I thought my game was broken or something, because you just hit him and then you go up here and then you hit this thing and then you just rinse and repeat for like what, 5 minutes? I have no idea why they thought this was a good idea, but alright. And I wish more levels had the entire team playable instead of only reserving this for boss fights. It's called Fantastic Four, so why am I usually alone? It's stuff like this that holds the game back and stops it from being a fantastic game to just being good. But for a movie-based game, this is up there with some of the better ones, and you can tell the developers were passionate about it. So for that alone, it passes. At least my childhood isn't ruined. Yet. Now we'll be talking about the Game Boy Advanced version of the game, and despite the limitations of a handheld, I think they managed to make do with it effectively. It's a top-down beat-em up with the story and levels being similar to the console version. You start out in space playing as Ben just before the cosmic storm gives everyone powers. Obviously the gameplay isn't as deep as the console version because here you can either attack enemies with just the normal attacks and 2 cosmic attacks, which are basically special moves. Despite the simplicity, I gotta say it's not half bad. The Thing is still the most fun for me. His normal attacks are just punches, but he has a special move where he can dash through enemies, and a special where he stomps on the floor damaging anyone nearby, and a 2-handed swing. He even says the line. Johnny can hit enemies and throw fireballs. His special move is he can throw a barrage of fireballs, which looks like he's bowling, and then his cosmic is spinning fire and splashing the floor with flames. He was also pretty fun and made difficult areas a breeze, since he could stand back from a safe distance and throw fireballs. Reed, when it comes to his special in normal, he stretches his arms to attack, but his cosmic is fun to use since he spins in a giant circle with his massive fists. It was also kind of funny just flailing your arms at enemies and watching them go flying. Sue can do her martial arts that she somehow learned while comatose and use a shield bubble around her and throw orbs at enemies. They managed to make each character even feel unique in the handheld version of this PS2. It seems like the developers really wanted to make a genuinely decent Fantastic Four game. The same enemies and bosses are here just like the console. Robots, dinosaurs, mummies, giant mechs. The levels once again have variety so it doesn't get stale. They even included the level where Ben turns back into his normal self, so you need to come up with strategic ways to defeat enemies since you're not as strong. But this dude must be built different here because he just squares up with giant robots and beats them to death with his bare hands. So does he really need to be the thing? I don't know. Some negatives though would be not being able to replay certain levels. You have to restart the entire game once you beat it, so that sucks. I wish there were a bit more combos and bonus content like the console version. The game is very short, probably under 2 hours, so it would have been nice to have some more content to do after beating the game. Other than that, this is a solid Game Boy game with a gameplay loop that didn't get boring for me. At least we're on a roll with decent games, unlike that Fantastic Four game from the PS1. But wait, they weren't done milking games for this movie. Oh yeah, they had to really milk it dry here because there's a second Game Boy game called Fantastic Four Flame On. This game is weird because it's based off the characters from the movie, but it has absolutely nothing to do with it. At least the other games were loosely tied to it, but this game has its own separate thing, so it's kind of odd to have the actors on the cover. It really could have been just a standalone Fantastic Four game. Okay, I'm gonna stop nitpicking here. So, how is it? It's good. Damn good. I actually had more fun playing this than the other Fantastic Four Game Boy game. If it wasn't obvious from the cover and the title of the game, you only play as Johnny Storm here. The only other time you see the other members show up is in the middle of the game and at the end. You're on your own for the entire game. But wow, they made Johnny really fun to play. This is a side-scroller beat 'em up, and the main goal here is to stop the main enemies of the game, which are the Skrull, while at the same time rescuing hot nurses, which act as your source of health, which is pretty funny. And then on top of that, rescuing normal civilians. The combat is simple, but so satisfying. You can do this combo, which involves punching, and you'll either do this sick uppercut or fist slam. You can throw fireballs, which comes in handy if you're in a sticky situation and low on health. There's also this nice little dash that you can do to damage enemies. On top of all this, you can jump and dash twice to get around quicker. So no, you can't actually fly, but this gets the job done. There's also two special moves that are just so cool. You can do like this Kamehameha that melts enemies who are unfortunate enough to be in the way, and then the other which you just nuke the entire screen, vaporizing everyone. I also love the art style of this game. It's bright and colorful, which is what the PS1 game should have been. The idle animations are cute too, with Johnny using a fire extinguisher on his face or him thinking of hot nurses. The bosses in this game are really easy and nothing special honestly, but one boss that immediately caught my attention was Galactus of all things. This Game Boy game to the more accurate version of Galactus than in the next movie Rise of the Silver Surfer. That's crazy. We have to free him from his chains, which is an insane concept. Is Johnny trying to apply to be the next Silver Surfer? It's pretty anticlimactic when you do free him. He just says thanks and leaves. I'm not a comic book connoisseur, but I'm pretty sure Galactus would have proceeded to have Earth for lunch after this. Anyways, this is a very fun Game Boy game with a simple yet hella fun gameplay loop. There's even a snowboarding level like in the movie where you need to beat your date in a race while dodging obstacles, and a motorbike level where you need to perform tricks like in the movie. It caught me by surprise. I mean, the cover doesn't really sell it, but never judge a book by its cover, I guess. Unless it's this shit. Okay, up next we got Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer on the PS2. The movie released 2 years after the first one, and while I don't think it's as good as that one, it's still a pretty good movie in my opinion. The Silver Surfer in this movie was just him, and I'm convinced he only came to Earth to aura farm because he stole every scene he was in. I just don't understand why they make Galactus a giant cloud. I mean, did they not take notes from the Game Boy game? And what was the point of bringing back Dr. Doom, only for him to get his ass whooped like 10 minutes later? Anyways, let's talk about the video game based on the movie. I actually remember playing this as a kid, and even back then, I didn't like it so much. But maybe I just didn't understand quality. Maybe now with a mature and more developed mind, I can truly appreciate this. I still don't like it. How do we go from a game that was made with care and passion to this? To start off, you get a cutscene where the team is going underground to find out why there's disturbances coming from underneath the Earth, and why there's giant holes opening up around the world. So it's kind of following the movie. It's a top-down beat 'em up, which isn't the problem. The problem is the combat is dumbed down exponentially. You don't even have combos anymore. You just have your regular attacks and the special cosmic attacks that don't feel as impactful. For example, in the Fantastic Four game based off the first movie, when you played as the Thing, your attacks felt heavy. You would slam the ground and it would shake and the sound was loud. Here, every attack is just so quiet and uneventful. Even throwing people is lame and they just get back up. How do you make tossing people around suck? I'd argue Johnny was the most fun to play because he has a move where he shoots out a wall of flames and the fireballs always came in clutch. But that's about it. Sue just sucks in this game. She has no health and her attacks are so weak compared to everyone else, so why even bother choosing her? Reed is still a decent pick, I guess, but he was more fun to use back then too. The problem is everyone's attacks just feel weak and floaty. Also, these levels, oh my god. This game is pretty short, like 3 hours long, and even that's pushing it because the levels are so long and identical. Everything looks the same, along with the enemies, which was a big complaint from the PS1 game, so not looking good. They are such a slog to get through, and with everything looking the same in the level, there were moments where I would just get lost. You just beat up some enemies with stale combat and go down elevators to complete the level, and that's the whole game. Elevators! The bosses suck, your hits don't feel like they're doing anything because they lack any sort of impact, and half the time they just send your ass flying across the arena, and you take eons to land on the floor. Why? Also, Silver Surfer in this game is already kidnapped by the time you meet him, and it's because Dr. Doom trapped him. What? In the movie, it was on sight. Silver Surfer turned Doom into his bitch and blasted him through several layers of snow. Galactus isn't even a threat here, and he's not even in the game, just briefly mentioned. You finish the game finding Dr. Doom again in a fight that drags on for way too long, and finally, it's over. This game lacks any personality, care, and fun. It was a chore to get through, and by the time I finished, I was glad it was over. The first game had bonus interviews and even levels, stuff that would have been released as DLC by today's standards. This game has none of that. Also, why is there only a cutscene in the very beginning of the game and at the end? The PS2 couldn't handle it or something? Honestly, it's better this way because they look horrible. The cutscenes from Spider-Man on the PS1 looked better than these. I also gotta ask, did the developers even watch the movie? This game has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. It has the Silver Surfer, but that's it. That's the only connection. This feels like a game that was made for the sake of it. I guess some positives would be you can now play all the levels with the whole team together and switch between them instantly. And that's really it for me. Well, there is a PS3 version of this game. Is it better? Did I miss out when I was a kid? I mean, kind of. It's like saying this dog shit doesn't smell as bad as this bullshit. One thing I noticed right away, it's not top down anymore. It looks more like the 2005 Fantastic Four video game. The levels look completely different too and have a bit more variety to them. You get a mission where you actually go out and touch grass to attend Richard and Sue's wedding day, which Reed really does not give a shit about. I was starting to think he may just allow Galactus to consume the world if it meant not marrying Sue. He takes his phone out during the wedding, and when the Silver Surfer flies by with his little army, I feel like he was relieved that they showed up. In terms of combat, it is better than the PS2 version. Ben is fun to play against since he picks people up and can attack enemies with the person he's carrying. He has a charge attack where he runs through enemies and has a ground slam which always comes in handy. That's about it for fun because everyone else is pretty boring to play. Reed can extend upwards attacking enemies that are in the air or in hard to reach areas. He can spam grenades and grab enemies from a distance to headbutt them. That's about it. I mean, he has this dodge move, but you only use it to avoid lasers, so it's super situational and you'll barely be using it. And I gotta say, they butchered my boy Johnny because by default, he's not on fire and you will be punished if you're on fire. Why? Being on fire wastes your cosmic, which is what gets consumed if you want to use special moves. Being on fire and using anything fire related depletes your cosmic, so most of the time you're just being your normal form punching enemies. The hell were they thinking? At that point, he's just a normal dude squaring up with a bunch of aliens. Compared to everyone else, he's useless. Even if you do use his fire abilities, they're so lame. He shoots fireballs, which wouldn't be so bad because they're a staple, but everything else is trash, so you'll really only be using the fireballs. He can fly, which I put in quotes because you'll mainly be on ground level to traverse faster or slightly above the ground to go over lasers, and that's about it. You can barely fly at all since it wastes cosmic faster than it takes to blink, so it's useless. The PS2 version had issues, but at least Johnny in that game was always on fire and had attacks that actually helped the team instead of this. Sue is a bit better here. She has this one move where she can trap enemies in a bubble and you can throw them all over the place, so that was kind of fun. Then she has these discs that she can throw, and that's about it for anything interesting. She can go invisible, but she really only uses this once during a mission where you have to sneak around. You will be doing the same attack throughout the entire game with each character. You don't unlock any new combos nor cosmic moves. You can upgrade the ones you have, but that's it. And they're not even cool upgrades. It's just damage buffs. Why can't I spin around as Reed? Even the Game Boy version of the 2005 game had that. There's also these missions where you play as Johnny and fly while dodging obstacles. It was a relief to see during the first mission because I thought this version of the game was going to have a variation in levels. No, they just milk these segments throughout the entire game, and when they do happen, they're long and boring. In the mission where you're in the city, you chase the Silver Surfer, similar to the movie, but it's nowhere near as awesome as that sequence. You fly in a tunnel and don't really dodge anything. If you fly high enough, you won't hit any cars, so you're just kind of awkwardly chasing him, waiting for the level to be over. What happened here? How did a PS2 game 2 years prior do the combat better than a PS3 game? A lot of enemies won't even react to you. They'll just walk around and let you clobber them. Even the enemies don't want anything to do with this game. The boss fights aren't terrible, but they're annoying and take ages. In the city mission, you fight this ship, and most of the time it just flies away while you have to chase it, and it keeps spamming spamming lasers at you so you won't get up. You throw a bunch of cars at it until it's destroyed, and that's it. Talk about forgettable. Then the final fight of Dr. Doom is ridiculously easy. You just shoot a laser at him so he lands, and proceed to hit him until he runs away like a pussy. Then rinse and repeat for way too long. And that's it. That's the entire fight. This game is just weird. Why do the cutscenes look so horrible? Yeah, that's another difference. The PS3 version of this game has cutscenes throughout the entire game instead of only twice. But they look awful. They lack any sort of detail or personality. The grass is just a green floor, and nobody has any facial expressions. In fact, the in-game cutscenes actually look better than these. I've never seen such a phenomenon. And why did the PS3 version have cutscenes for the whole game? There's no way the PS2 could not handle this shit. This is a game that feels like it exists just to capitalize while the movie was still new. Not a passion project made with care like the 2005 Fantastic Four game. What a shame. But wait, there's another port of Rise of the Silver Surfer. Oh yeah, they weren't done unloading turds on the shit conveyor belt, because we got Rise of the Silver Surfer on the Nintendo DS. If their goal was to make one of the worst DS games ever made, then they did a fantastic job. It is a bland, flavorless platformer. Yeah, a platformer. You start off as Ben, and yeah, they didn't care. You punch an enemy twice and they're dead. No combos at all, really. You have cosmic abilities, if you could even call them that. Apparently, it takes cosmic powers for Ben to dash and Reed to do a simple stretch. Sue just flies around and shoots bubbles at enemies, and those are her missions. Just slowly fly while trying not to get hit by enemies and the level itself. The jumping. Oh my god. The jumping. How do you mess up the core mechanic in a platforming game? It's hard to put into words how it works, but your character doesn't do a controlled jump. Instead, they leap forward going Mach 100, so you kind of have to go backwards in midair, because half the time, you'll go over the platform you intended to land on. It's just boring. It lacks any sort of challenge. It's easy because you might as well just be looking at an enemy and they're dead. The graphics look dull, and before you say this is a DS game, look at Fantastic Four Flame On. It's a damn Game Boy game, and this blows this game's visuals out of the water. The bosses are atrocious. It's just tapping or sliding the screen in order to reflect their attacks back at them, and the fights are longer than they have any reason to be, so you'll be tapping and sliding your screen like a madman for like 5 minutes without any sort of change to break the monotony. You can't even play as Johnny like everyone else. They just let you play as him in these lame shooting missions. There's not much to say about this one, since there's not much to it. You beat one level, you might as well have beaten all of them. You fight one boss, you might as well have fought all of them. We do have some honorable mentions when it comes to Fantastic Four video games. I didn't dedicate an entire section to these because there really is not a lot to talk about when it comes to them. Hardly anyone has ever heard of these, and they can barely even be considered games because one is ridiculously short. I'm talking like less than 20 minutes. And another doesn't even have graphics. Let's talk about the Fantastic Four game based on the 2005 movie, but on Java. I mean, just look at it. Do I even need to go on? Well, I'll briefly talk about it because I love y'all. But right off the bat, aside from the main menu, this game has no music. It's just awkward silence. I guess no composer wanted their reputation stained being associated with this. This is just weird. You first play as Johnny Storm, and you have to face what may be his biggest threat yet. Sprinklers. How the hell is he supposed to stop Galactus when he gets sent to the ER for some water? You just go through tiny levels to have like a BS objective, like destroying a certain number of robots or collecting items. The enemies go down in one hit, and there's no boss fights, except Dr. Doom, if you even want to call that a boss fight. To beat him, you don't even fight him. You do the same tedious tasks you've been doing since the beginning, and that's it. You win. It baffles me why they even bothered with this, but you can see why I made this an honorable mention. There's just not much to say here. Next is Quest Probe, the Human Torch and the Thing, which released all the way back in 1985 on the Apple II. You just type in the chat box what you want Ben or Johnny to do, and that's the whole game, if you can even call it a game. It's a bunch of still images that most of the time barely change, and this is basically it. You just repeatedly tell them to go somewhere, and they ask what now, and then you repeat this for the whole game. If I was a kid in 1985, I think I'd rather go outside than play this. But man, we really do take for granted the games we have now. Those were all the Fantastic Four video games. There's not a lot of good ones really. The two I enjoyed the most was the Fantastic Four PS2 game from 2005 and Fantastic Four Flame On. The Game Boy Advance version of Fantastic Four 2005 isn't half bad either. Everything else was just painfully mid or downright a threat to us as a species. Maybe with the success of Fantastic Four First Steps, they might actually make a unique Fantastic Four game that can stand next to some of the best superhero video games. That would be fantastic. Anyways, what do you guys think? Do you like or dislike Fantastic Four video games? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and yeah, thanks for watching.